Hello and welcome. Welcome to the DSM's Lifting the Veil panel about mental health. My name is Michael Maureen, and I'm the editor of DSM Magazine, and I am really glad you're here for what is shaping up to be a really good discussion. We had a run through yesterday, and I can't wait to share some of the stories and expertise from our panel. So if you are a regular to these events, you know that sometimes we get started just with the chat, just to get your chat fingers ready to go and just to make sure that the chat is working. Go ahead and in the chat, type in, just say hello, say your name and why you are tuning in today. And keep in mind that throughout this hour, if you have questions, go ahead and type those into the chat and we will try our best to funnel those questions to our experts. So just feel free to practice out the chat, say hello, and we are glad you are here. As we get started, I want to make sure that everybody is plugged in and ready to go. And I want to start just with a thank you to our panelists. We are so grateful for our panelists and our sponsors, without whom we could not do this. So to start us off, let me introduce you to Jason Bridey, the Director of Business Development from Clive Behavioral Health, which has been such a stalwart supporter of this series. So Jason, hello.
Hello, and thank you. Yeah, real quick, I just want to mention a little bit about Clive Behavioral Health, a little upfront information, and then we'll turn it back over to you all. But Clive Behavioral Health, for those who you may not know, is a fairly new mental health hospital based in Clive, Iowa. We are a 100-bed licensed inpatient mental health hospital serving children and adolescents ages 4 through 17 and adults 18 and older. We are open 24/7 and offer a no-cost level of care assessment. We are here for those who are in crisis, and anyone can simply walk in just like you would into an emergency department without an appointment. We want to be there for people, and so our doors are always open. We also offer outpatient group therapy programming for both adults, adolescents. First, the adolescents, our partial hospitalization program, some call that a day treatment program, is for adolescents aged 12 to 17. It runs Monday through Friday for 4 hours, about four weeks. Our outpatient programming for adults includes also a partial hospitalization program, Monday through Friday, same 4 hours per day, 4 weeks in time and length. Participants who do, just on the outpatient side, participants benefit from structured therapy and education. They'll receive benefit from increased self-awareness and self-worth skills, skill development to encourage healthy and sustainable life choices, as well as medication management while you're under our care. We'll also want everybody to know we offer a substance use disorder recovery program for adults in the evenings. So we're pretty full in our programming offerings, certainly on our outpatient side. We accept most commercial insurances, Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE, so we rarely run into problems with that. And so without further ado, that's just kind of a quick snapshot about Clive Behavioral Health. We've been a proud sponsor, presenting sponsor since its inception. Sorry, I had a little stumble there, but since its inception, we've been on board and supporting and really appreciate the educational value that this program brings to the public. So I want to thank Business Publications for hosting this Lifting the Veil series. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Michael and the panel.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to your colleagues at Clive Behavioral Health. We have a new presenting sponsor this year for the Lifting the Veil series, and that is Wellaby. And we'll hear a word from the Chief Marketing Officer, Debbie DeCamp. Hello.
Hello, and thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. It is my honor to represent Wellaby today. For those of you who aren't familiar with Wellaby, Wellaby is a new name, but we're not a new company. We were founded 95 years ago in Des Moines as American Republic Insurance Company. Over the years, we've grown significantly, and in June of last year, we unified our entire company under our new brand, Wellaby, to better reflect who we are and what we do. At Wellaby, we believe we should do more, worry less, and make every day better. Since 1929, we have provided solutions to help people protect their health and financial well-being. Every day, we show we care through our shared values, doing what's right, and helping people be well so they can prepare for tomorrow and live better today. And that's why we're honored to support the Lifting the Veil ongoing series. We understand being well isn't just about health. Well-being is a state of being healthy, happy, and comfortable, both physically and mentally, and both personally and professionally. I want to thank DSM Magazine and Business Publications Corp for bringing us all together today to discuss this important topic, as well as our panelists for sharing their expertise. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Debbie. We'd also like to extend a shout out and a word of appreciation to Easter Seals, who is our supporting sponsor. So thank you really to all the sponsors who make this possible. If you are just jumping in, just a reminder, you can use the chat. I see that some of you are already getting good practice. Thanks for saying hello and just letting us know why you were tuning in today. Feel free to use that chat throughout the hour. So without any more preamble, I want to jump into this discussion because we really have an expert lineup ready to go. When we were planning this series about a year ago, I think every other news headline was about artificial intelligence and its impact in every industry. So we thought that artificial intelligence would be a rich field of discussion, area of discussion for this ongoing series on mental health. But we very quickly discovered that new technology has all kinds of different applications and ways that mental health care is changing. So we're not ready to outsource mental health care to the robots just yet, and we probably never will. Cross your fingers. But there are some interesting new tools that really smart people are using and thinking about. So we're gonna share some examples. But I just want to just remind people that technology is changing really quickly, often in ways that we take for granted. Not so long ago, this idea of a Zoom session would be sort of NASA level new technology, but you can hear my voice, you can see my pretty face. And after the pandemic, we are comfortable with these kinds of tools for human interaction. So that's just one example of how technology moves pretty quickly. But I want to introduce the panelists who have their own examples and they can share perspectives from their own careers. So the panelists, there's a slide here. We have Brian Hall with Ellie Mental Health. We have Katie Issa from Des Moines Public Schools. Yogesh Shah is from Broadlands Medical Center, and Anna Zaidama is from Good Life Therapy. So in just a moment, we're going to hear a word from each of these folks. So let's just start in that order. We'll go in the order you were just introduced by alphabetical by last name. So Brian, will you share an example of how you are using new technology in ways that are different from even 3 or 5 years ago?
Absolutely, Michael, and thank you for having me here today to participate in this conversation. Happy to do so. At Ellie Mental Health, we have 2 locations in the Des Moines area, Clive and Ankeny, with a team of therapists who are providing services to clients both in person and frequently via telehealth services. Of course, as everybody's well aware, we saw an exponential increase in the need for telehealth services about 4 years ago, over 4 years ago now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, which at the time was, for me, a lifesaver. I was working in private practice at that time. Ellie was not yet here in Iowa. And I remember having a panic attack on that Friday, March 13th, thinking, oh my goodness, the world is about to look very, very different for we don't know how long. And what's that going to mean for my clients? What's that going to mean for myself, my ability to work with my clients, my financial future? It quickly became clear that we were going to need to look for new technology. I should say existing technology, but new applications of that technology. And fortunately, insurance companies got on board really very quickly. At the time, one major insurance payer, for example, was known to pay about 70% of a telehealth session as compared to an in-person session, which still strikes me as just asinine. It's as much, if not more, work to connect with clients via telehealth. And we can talk more about that later this hour. But that quickly changed where they came around, insurance companies willing to pay 100%. And then further into the pandemic, it came to be announced that's going to be a lasting change. And that, of course, has been borne true. 4 years later, we're still doing a lot of telehealth virtual therapy services with our clients. various therapists have various kind of comfort level with that. I'm somebody who I think, like a lot of therapists, prefers when possible to meet with clients in person. But I certainly recognize that for some clients, it is more comfortable to Zoom in for a therapy session, so to speak. Or maybe it's not even so much a matter of comfort as just accessibility. And that's where, tip of the hat to telehealth services and increasing the accessibility of mental health care for clients everywhere.
Thank you, Brian. You set us off to a good start. Katie, let's hear from you next.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Katie Issa. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I currently serve as behavioral health service coordinator for Des Moines Public Schools. And one of the changes that also came from the COVID-19 pandemic was our use of what's called Go Guardian and Beacon. And so what that is technology that alerts us identified support team members anytime a student is reviewing information that may be considered self-harming behaviors, information about death and suicide. And what that does is immediately alerts, again, those support staff members who've had training in how to respond. And then they have an in-person discussion fairly quickly after that with that individual student to kind of determine what was that information about, differentiating, were you looking something up for a research project, or was that something that we need to get more connected around, work with your caregivers and find the appropriate supports. So that's just kind of one example, and we're really grateful for that.
Thank you, Katie. That when you first told me about that example, it seemed sort of Big Brother to me, just that there's this all-knowing program that monitors student usage. But what I really like about it is that it sends a flag to humans, caring trained professional humans who can follow up with the students if they need help. So that seems like it's such a good example of how to use a tool, how to use artificial intelligence or computer smarts with human wisdom to sort of reach better outcomes and help students. So thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Shah, you're up next. What are some examples of how you are using new technology that did not exist 3 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thank you, team. So yes, compared to 20 years ago, there are significant, it's a new paradigm shift in my field of work. And now with technology and with artificial intelligence, I can detect earlier dementia, especially Alzheimer's disease, much more earlier than I could do a year or 5 years ago. So if you'd asked me about just even 2-3 years ago, what's the most definite way to prove that somebody has Alzheimer's disease? And the answer most likely would have been through autopsy after death to check for the brain. But now, today, in 2024, we have capacity, and in my clinic, we do almost every day blood test which checks for what kind of proteins a person has with memory loss. We do that. And we use artificial intelligence to look at the MRI, the brain scans, and in future, very, very near future, look at the EEG, the waves in the brain, and interpret that through artificial intelligence and see what is happening in somebody's brain. So it's a huge hope and paradigm shift. So people, probably your audience have gathered, I'm a geriatrician, dementia specialist with focus on brain health and early detection of dementia.
That is an excellent example. And one thing I love about this panel is that we cover the whole age range. So from kindergartners all the way up to folks who are experiencing dementia. So we've got you covered. Last up, let's hear from Anna. What are some ways that you are using new tools?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. My name is Anna Zaidema. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I would probably echo very much what Brian was saying. I think within the last 3 to 5 years, definitely the advancement of being able to use telehealth appointments has been huge in whether or not we have clients who live all across the state. I think accessibility of services, especially in rural areas. And I think also to some extent privacy too. I think that sometimes a barrier to services in rural areas may be, somebody does have a practice there, the town sees their car there, or they're just maybe still have that stigma around mental health and maybe fearful of kind of having people know. And so I think that with telehealth too, there's a certain level of privacy that might decrease resistance to access to services. And then going forward, I think, with telehealth too, it's made it so that with weather, living in Iowa, there's a lot of times with blizzards or, bad weather that we would have to close down and not see clients. And so it makes it so that from our home, we can continue to offer those services, or so that clinicians, depending on their family life as well, it's made it very flexible, where we have some at our practice who may work in the office, 2-3 days a week, and then work from home a day or two a week. And so just having that flexibility to work with family and a little bit work-life balance, I think has been really helpful. And then kind of going forward, I think what I'm most looking forward to and learning more about sort of AI and new things that are emerging would be opportunities for how it's going to help us as clinicians to kind of better, improve our treatment planning, decrease the time, honestly, with notes, things that we get bombarded with that then maybe will help us increase our patient care because we don't have that on our plate as well. So
Those are excellent points. Thank you, Hannah. Both you and Brian touched on access, especially with telehealth tools. And I think especially in Iowa, where I think we're struggling to provide, from what I understand, there's a shortage of mental health care workers across the state. So access is really important. How do you make decisions about increasing access in a way that doesn't move too quickly or doesn't expand the digital divide that can exist? Do you find that some of your clients, I imagine some of your clients are ready to plug in and they're very tech savvy, but some of them are reluctant. How do you sort of manage increasing access with the desire to not leave people behind?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I guess I would say that, we still see with certain populations that it may be difficult for them to access, kind of have electronic means, right? Because it does require having a computer. I think that there could be financial barriers as well, where there's maybe certain populations that it may be more difficult to utilize those services, or individuals who just don't feel tech savvy. Here, we are, I'm really grateful to have an incredible administrative staff who really will try to walk people through how to use the portal, because we don't do very much paperwork anymore that's hard copy. Everything is pretty much done electronically. However, we do still find that if there are people who kind of struggle with that, they will typically opt for those in-person appointments. And there are still people I've seen for, a very long time who just do not want to do telehealth. They've been coming in person. And so they'll just kind of say, what, if I need to cancel that session, I'll just opt to wait. And, but there are others too, again, that accessibility, if somebody has a work thing that comes up and suddenly they can't make their appointment, but they can go to their car and do it at a different time. So I think it's probably something we're still navigating. I don't really have a perfect answer for that because honestly, I haven't really given it a lot of thought. So, but I do think there are still some barriers to some of those services, and how do you kind of bridge those, I think is excellent for consideration.
We are all figuring this out as we go along. So I appreciate your candor. Brian, do you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And in my mind, there's a clinical corollary here, which is the maxim meet your client where they're at, not grammatically appropriate, but it's a good point. Some clients, to Anna's point, are going to have a great deal of comfortability with technology, and that's wonderful. Others will be more reserved or just unsure. We offer for our clients, more than offer, we ask them to complete their initial consents and privacy policies. Some of those acknowledgments are all to be done electronically through an app. That doesn't work for everybody. And we understand that, so it's an option to them if they're not comfortable with it when they come to the office, or if they are going to be telehealth. There's a gap there, but we can go ahead and have them complete paper forms that can be mailed to people, or that they can complete when they come in for their first appointment. If they don't want telehealth, they don't have to do telehealth. And Anna touched on that too, as well as, on those bad weather days, which we're probably about to have some of, there's an option for clients to see their clinicians via telehealth without anybody having to drive through the snow. But that, again, is an option. Nobody's going to say, well, you have to be there. It's just something that we can offer to our clients so that, if they're ready and willing and have the capability and the comfort level, we can still go ahead and meet. So it's really trying to meet the clients, like I said, where they're at, and work with them as best we can.
Beyond some of the logistical questions about how you start using new tools, I'm also curious about some ethical questions that some of the new tools raise, especially with the examples, Katie and Yogesh, that you shared. How do you and your colleagues have those discussions? How do you decide whether to start implementing a new tool or let other people experiment with it before you adopt it with your teams? Take us through the process of how you decide to, or what sort of permissions or clearance you need to get permission to have a program that monitors student searches, or to administer that blood test for dementia. I imagine there's some gray, murky area that you have to walk through before you start using those tools.
No, that's a great point. And I feel, Michael, that will happen more and more frequently as the technology gets better, more exposure, whether it's AI driven or blood test driven biomarkers, which very likely is going to come in all mental health, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, or dementia. So in my world, I'm very cautious about offering that to non-patient, meaning when my friends or colleague ask me, hey, what about this new blood test you're doing on your patients for early detection? Can I have it on myself? And answer is no. Even though it works very well for patients, it's only meant for people with some memory loss, some change to be done in a clinical setting. So then people don't start using it on their own, because it happened in the past. To your point, there's a company known as Quest. It brought up a couple of years ago blood test biomarker for early detection of dementia and put over the counter. And people started using it. And then, of course, they had to go back to their healthcare providers to interpret those answers, which gets difficult morally, ethically, medically. So it's a very good point about how do we use it. So the answer, that is, use it very cautiously, use it appropriately on appropriate patient to start with, and then slowly, gradually, after it's well proven, expand to wider group.
Katie, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I would second quite a bit of what Dr. Shah had stated in terms of just using caution. Really looking at what the research says of doing something versus not doing anything, as well as lots of training, following those parameters in which that those settings are under, but then also knowing that it's not a replacement of. So it's an addition to, it's an additional tool to help us connect, but it is not at all replacing any of the other work and services that we provide to students to ensure that we are meeting their needs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think also there are privacy concerns too in all of this, that I'm sure you have to stay within the guidelines of HIPAA laws and all of that. Maybe you saw in the news recently that 23andMe, the genetic testing company, filed for bankruptcy. Somebody is sitting on a whole bunch of data. So as different pockets of mental health care are using different tools, I imagine that somewhere it's being collected in ways that we can't even really imagine how that could be useful or harmful in the future. So
And then, Michael, to that point, especially in my case with the genetic markers, what I have access to for early detection of dementia, Alzheimer's, the consequences are not just to that patient, but also happens to be for the siblings and to the children. So I do consider that very carefully before getting it on a patient. And even if I do, when I do, the patient's family has to know that this is happening, and there is potential that the children can carry that strong dominant gene out of that test.
Dr. Shah, I'm not an expert at all, and I imagine other people are curious. With that dementia test, what's the advantage of finding out early? Are there things that people can do to mitigate the symptoms, or what do you do with that information if you learn?
Yeah, no, great point. And I'll summarize my work of last 20 years into 2 minutes. So
Ready, go.
So yes, dementia is not when we say dementia, when I say dementia, it's not it's a it's a big umbrella term, and under that comes many different types. Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. 70% of all dementias are Alzheimer's disease. The others being frontotemporal dementia, what unfortunately Bruce Willis has, Lewy body dementia, what Robin Williams said. So when I talk about dementia, it's Alzheimer's disease. It's not a normal part of aging. That's one. And the pathology, what we try to get through blood, starts happening in the brain 17 to 20 years before the actual symptoms happen. And the third good news is that 40 to 45% of all Alzheimer's and many other vascular dementia can be prevented if caught early. So to your point, why detect it early? That we can prevent or slow down or reverse up to 40% of all dementias, by good science, not just one-time science. The medical journal, what I follow, named Lancet, they have done this third session now, every third year. And now just recently, they have now 14 factors in our life with all of us, which we can minimize to reduce our chance of dementia, which applies to actually what Dr. Hall and Anna, you're talking, that by controlling, managing depression in our middle age, we can reduce dementia by 4 to 5%.
I think there's so many applications where you can see how that research would be useful. Katie, I feel like you should get a list of those 14 good behaviors and just start telling the kindergartners.
Actually, that's a very good point you bring up. England, Katie, has done this. In UK, because of this science, and one of the factor is finishing high school education, and the education, longer we study anything, the more cognitive brain energy, brain reserve we create. The same concept as finance. The earlier we invest in our 401, IPERS 403, the more we'll have at our retirement. So because of that, UK in a system has made, of course, universal education, but healthier diet in their school system also, thinking dementia in their mind.
I'm going to have to connect with you after this, Dr. Shah, and get a link to that study.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a very it's what every patient I treat has to have some form of prevention commitment before they can get the expensive treatments I can offer.
Mm-hmm. And holistic.
And holistic, exactly.
You know, it's what it sounds like, right?
Yeah. And I can mention some of that. It's education, it's hearing loss prevention, it's not smoking, it's depression, it's social isolation, physical activity, all of that.
Eat your vegetables.
And which applies to many mental health conditions. It's not just isolated for Alzheimer's. If I was to name all 14, you would say, yeah, of course, this applies to depression, anxiety, and others.
Dr. Shaw, will you mention briefly some of the new developments with smart appliances and smart homes?
Yeah. So that's, as a geriatrician, that's my another big area of interest, especially falls and falls prevention. So just to touch on that topic alone, unfortunately, as we age after 65, almost 30 to 40% of community dwelling people, these are the people living in our homes, working appropriately, fall sometime during that in their life. And half of them, more than half of them happens to be in the house. So if I'm 65, my chance of falling in my own home is quite high, almost 1 in 3 chance that I'll fall this next year. And that happens to be near the bathroom, going in and out of the bathroom and shower. So with that in mind, lot of appropriate AI uses have come to reduce my fall in as simple as Apple Watch. So the smart watch, as you might have heard, they have capacity to see if I'm losing my balance. Then I would get a vibration or a voice, and my colleague, my reference is, my next of kin is, they would get a message, hey, Yogi is losing his balance. So that's one. Second is there are smart cameras inside the house. They can sense my motion without taking pictures, just sense the motion and see if my balance is also off. And again, preemptively let system know that there's chance of fall. The third is if I'm not moving along enough and not walking enough, that again gives us. So there are a lot of different appropriate ways to either reduce my falls or mention to the system about before the falls can happen.
Yesterday, you mentioned that smart fridges can even count how many times the fridge opens up during the middle of the night. You know, if grandpa doesn't remember if he got a meal, or there are all these appliances and really innovative ways to use technology. But as you can imagine, there are ethical questions about that. It makes me.
Yeah, and the other things are, and of course, I want other panelists to share their views, but medications, for example, after 65, almost 30 to 40% of us do not take medications, chronic medicine, not just antibiotics for 5 days, but hypertensive medicine or dementia medicine, which are long-term, lifelong. 30-40% of us don't take it regularly, either overdose it because I forgot that I took it in the morning, or not take it. So there are the smart medication dispensers which gives the signals, alarms, messages when I have not taken my dose the time I'm supposed to take it.
I think about parents who monitor their teenagers, and with their smartphones in their car, they can see where they're going. They have to be careful because soon their day will come where their kids will monitor them at their homes. So just be careful. There's payback. For everyone out there, what I love about these examples is that they're either being used currently, or they're sort of near future applications of ways that we can use tools that we have to better take care of each other. For everybody, are there certain technologies that you're keeping an eye on, or are you and your colleagues, are you following chatter or medical journals or research about what are the things that you expect to start using, or you are eager or maybe just curious to start using in the next few years? What's on the horizon? And anybody can jump in. Anna, go for it.
Oh, sorry. I think I'm most interested in looking at the different software programs that are coming out for clinicians to help with, like I said, with treatment planning, with documentation. I think there's still some caution with them, with anything new, in our profession. It's turning to our code of ethics and, making sure that first do no harm, consulting with other colleagues, doing the research, really making sure that clients are aware of really thorough, informed consent, especially with newer programs that are able to record sessions and then transcribe the note. I think that it's interesting kind of doing some research on it now of some of the pros and cons with that. And, you know, because we're human, there are certain advancements that AI is having that it's going to be able to sometimes pick up on maybe things that are coming up in session, that because we have our own biases or our own countertransference coming up in the session, depending our relationship with the individual, that we might miss. And so it's able now to detect, you know, nuances in language, facial expressions, things like that, that's going to early detect maybe depression, anxiety, PTSD. So I just think that's fascinating to be able to, you know, and still cautious about it. But I think it's helping client care, but I think also helping us as clinicians as well.
Thank you. Those are great examples. Brian or Katie, do you have do you want to chime in? Go for it.
Yeah, I would add, you know, it's a little different in schools, right? We have lots of partnerships with in-person clinicians that come in from agencies. But what we found is anything we can do to increase the amount of time and capacity they have to serve and students is something that I'll be watching. So to Anna's point, thinking about the AI technology that's going to help with treatment plans and decrease that time that clinicians spend with maybe paperwork and documenting will help us serve more students because we have the need. And so is doing that within our ethical, you know, bounds is something that I will continue to watch. We're also looking into just telehealth and how to partner. We've got a partnership going that hopefully that will be up and running soon to give families more access that way. But also going back to our previous conversation and just that we're giving those individuals choice and what it best fits their needs and their access as well. So we'll keep eyes on some of that.
Brian, what's on your radar?
I've been a therapist for 18 years, Michael, and in that time, I have yet to meet a clinician, myself included, who likes to write notes. It's just, we love talking with clients, we love intervening and helping people, but yeah, the documentation is a drag. So of course, there's a lot of interest in how can AI assist us in an ethically appropriate way in taking some time away from clinicians on the documentation piece. It is important, but we can then give that time back to our clients. We can take better self-care of ourselves in between sessions as well. So there's a lot of potential there that's exciting to consider. There's certainly a need to be cautious of privacy considerations, as Anna talked about. Of course, with ethics, we want to always observe good informed consent. So if a session is going to be monitored for documentation purposes, our clients, of course, need to know about that. So at Ellie, we have moved toward, on an experimental basis, AI-assisted generated treatment plans here over the last few months. And it's going really quite well. It just requires the clinician to enter into the software a little bit about that client's goals and diagnostic considerations. And then I like to remind everyone that's not the treatment plan itself that the AI generates for you, but it's suggestions, it's recommendations. It's a really good starting point. So nobody feels like they're starting from scratch from one treatment plan to the next. And so we're getting good quality treatment plans and we're saving a lot of time in the process. So that's been win-win for us so far.
I think
And Michael, the other thing in the same topic is also used in memory, dementia, and I'm sure depression, as Anna mentioned, there's especially one called cognospeech. And what it detects is as the question gets asked by AI and all the answer gets interpreted through AI and decides about the flow, the speech, the pauses, and talks about possible memory, connection, and depression also.
Those are all really interesting examples. And I think across all industries, people are trying to figure out how to use AI to to be more efficient and to outsource the things that the robots can do so that there's more time for the things that humans are particularly well suited to do and that only humans can do. I'm curious about, and Dr. Shah, you mentioned this, and all of you sort of poked around the edges. There are, I mean, with AI technology, it's getting very smart. Many of us have experimented just having a chat with, with Siri or with Chat GPT or whatever. I imagine there are helpful applications with just having someone have a conversation. It's not that much different than a journal prompt where they get a question and they write it. And if they type it into a chat bot, it can give them new things to write about or new questions. I'm curious if you see if we are heading toward that direction or if there's still too many kinks to work out. And it occurs to me, even if patients know they are talking to a robot, they can still get some value out of that. Are we there yet, or is that still sort of beta
I,
testing?
at least in my field and my reading, we are there, yeah, there, period. Both for therapeutics and diagnostics, meaning by talking to a AI generated voice and questions, there's a potential to diagnose memory changes early. That's one. And second, if those who are in the advanced, moderate or advanced stages of dementia, feeling lonely, there's potential for AI generated voice and or AI generated small robotics which can walk around in the nursing homes and become a pet. And especially in Japan, these are very popular tools because my fear is, Michael, which has happened in Japan and other countries, potentially here in many years to come. As the younger patient population reduces, the caregiver burden will increase in 1-to-1 in Japan. Currently now it's only 1-to-1. So meaning for every one elderly, there's only one young elder. So we'll need to depend on appropriate technology to take care of our elderly.
Mhm. Do you have patients, and this is a question for any of you, do you have patients who are, or students who are gung-ho to try the next greatest thing, or patients who are really resistant to it? I imagine you have a range of people who are eager or reluctant to try new technologies.
Yeah, others can answer, but in my case, the good part, as we touched on this topic, the only good part of pandemic, apart from few things, is that most of us now feel very comfortable with simple technology, whether it's virtual meetings like this or the concept of electric cars and getting AI-driven cars. So I think the comfort level in my patient population, 65 and older, it's much more than I would have expected pre-pandemic.
Interesting.
I think that I'm kind of finding, and I think there's still some new stuff, I think, outside of just using AI, for like in sessions of like what would we maybe recommend to clients when we think of kind of helping them develop coping strategies or tools to use when they're not in session with us. One thing that is kind of coming about, right, or that has been about, that is seems to be could be really positive and helpful is things with the chat bots or Chat GPT as well for people who are not in crisis, right, of being able to type in or ask questions to get some of the basic coping strategies that we would maybe recommend. Hey, journaling, can it give a guided meditation or a deep breathing exercise? Can it maybe give some cognitive behavioral therapy kind of homework assignments that they can do outside of session too? I think the biggest thing is that whether or not, I find at least, that whether or not a client is going to be reluctant to using something new or not, is that they're trusting us, that as we build our therapeutic relationship with our clients, and at least in the mental health field, we know that regardless of what intervention that we're using or modality, 70% Up to 70% of treatment efficacy and outcome comes down to our relationship and the therapeutic rapport with our client. And so they're building trust in us. And I think that, part of doing that work and our authenticity, that being honest that these things are new and emerging, and yeah, we're trying to research them and maybe try them ourselves, before recommending that clients use them. But I think that, as that trust gets built, and if we feel like, hey, this clinically could be something that could be really helpful to you, I think that oftentimes can kind of help with some of that resistance, just that relationship piece of it. What do you think, Brian?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Anna. I would highlight that, so much of our work, and for Dr. Shaw too, and Katie, it's relational. It's the human element, and there's certainly ways that technology can supplement that, serve as a useful adjunct to the work that we do. But maybe this is romantic of me. At the end of the day, I just like to think, that human piece is still going to be prerequisite for effective therapy outcomes. The work that we do is based on the connections that we forge. From those connections, then, in traditional therapy, we use technique, we turn to cognitive behavioral therapy, we talk about coping skills. We can still do those things, but I think Anna's got it right that, that's where the technology can step in between sessions, again, as an adjunct to the work that we're doing in our sessions, to provide further value and benefit to our clients. But I still want to believe the relationship, that human-to-human connection, is going to be of utmost importance.
We have one specific question from the chat. Will the insurance companies allow AI-generated notes? I've heard that some insurance companies don't even allow cutting and pasting for notes. And it may be different for social work as opposed to mental health, a mental health situation. Does anybody have insights on that? Are insurance companies receptive to AI-generated notes from sessions?
My thought, I'm not employed by an insurance company. I'm certainly not an auditor, and I'm grateful for that, but I'm grateful for the work that they do. I would say if somebody was to look at notes and see the exact same thing, whether it's copied and pasted by the clinician themselves or very similar AI generated notes, week after week, that's going to cause problems with any insurance review. So again, we have to look at, if we're going to use AI assistance, we really need to remember it's there for assistance. It can't do all the work for us. Therapy notes, for example, need to be individualized. And that's something I'm sure the technology is moving toward. But again, the human element, there's still going to need to be a human review of that note, alter it, make it unique to that circumstances, that individual circumstances, and the session of that particular content.
I appreciate the question and the answer. As we are rounding out the hour here, I want to give, we will give the final word to our panelists. So take a minute to synthesize what we've heard. And if you want to send us off with a nugget of wisdom, you'll have a chance in a minute. But I want to just remind everybody here for a few announcements with DSM. Our next unveiling of our every other month publication is on January 13th, courtside at the Iowa Wolves. At the, what was it? It's still called the Wells Fargo Arena for now. But please join us there. We will be sending more details on that. And this one you will want to register for because there's a limited space there. Our annual Home Design Awards ceremony is February 25th, where you can see into, it's a good excuse to peek into homes around the metro and see how designers are thoughtfully improving homes. We also, I really appreciate discussions like this and the questions in the chat because we are always looking for new stories and new content. If you have ideas, please send them my way. If you would like to advertise or folks who would like to advertise, my colleague Lawrence Cunningham would love to hear from you. And you can subscribe to all of our publications, both the Business Record and DSM, including our annual Lifting the Veil issue, which is just posted online just this week. And there's information here on your screen about how to get a printed copy. But again, if you appreciated this discussion, I encourage you to pick up that publication because it has a spectrum of stories led in chief by my colleague Haley Evans. And it's a really good sampling of stories about mental health care, and it has a local perspective. So we hear from people like the local experts, like you heard from today, sort of tackling national and global issues, but looking at it through a local lens. And we understand, as the panelists said today, it is the human connection, and we are part of a community that is working together to improve mental health here in Central Iowa. So let's give everybody one last note. Before we do, I'd like to again thank our sponsors from Clive Behavioral Health and Wellaby. We could not do a panel like this without your support, so thank you very much, and we sure appreciate it. But so for closing thoughts, let's go around in reverse order. So Anna Zaidema with a Z, you always go last, so how about you go first?
Michael. So closing, kind of just a tidbit on what takeaway.
Sure, something you learned or something that you'd like to just a little bit of wisdom you'd like to impart with our listeners.
I would say that just getting the opportunity to be on this panel really highlights to me how important collaborative approaches to care are. That, we're not just working within our own vacuum. I'm not just a therapist in an office just working with that, how everything, physical health impacts mental health, how social relationships, how adverse childhood experiences impact us later in life, and just how important it is, though, to continue connecting as a community with other providers and other people with areas of expertise in order to treat the individual more holistically. And, so it's just always great to be able to learn from others. I think it can be easy sometimes. Things can start to feel a little too business-like, where people think that it's a piece of the pie, but there's so much need. And I think that's why it's important. And people call in, here to our office. If we don't have openings, we try everything we can not to put people on a wait list, right? It's referring out. It's knowing who's taking people. It's about getting people the help that they need. And so I think hopefully just continuing to destigmatize mental health. I think, with COVID, that kind of started that conversation. I think a lot of even celebrities, athletes, people who have come forth to help destigmatize has been huge as well. So I just look forward to continuing to learn. I know change can be scary. I think even the topic of AI initially, right, kind of makes my nervous system a little uncomfortable. But the more that then you research and you learn about it, it's kind of seeing moving into that change. The change is coming. So how can we move into it in a way that will be effective and helpful? So I guess that would be my tidbit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to just give a quick plug in the chat. My colleague Alex posted a link to the new issue, a digital issue, and this new issue includes a story about Anna and her team's work with Perry schools after last year's shooting, and how her team really is continuing to help the students and faculty and community work through a really, really tough chapter in their town's history. So thank you, Anna, for your ongoing work. Let's go next to Dr. Shaw.
Yeah, Michael, the future of brain health in general is very bright and hopeful. And that's because there's a paradigm shift in how we can detect early changes of Alzheimer's disease, one of that. And the reason for checking early is that up to 40% of dementia's Alzheimer's can be prevented if caught early through appropriate lifestyle modifications. And now it can be done through simple blood tests. Some types of Alzheimer's can be detected through simple blood tests. So I feel very hopeful, and I've seen the paradigm shift in my 30 years of practice.
Thank you. Katie, you're up.
Yeah, I just I would echo even what Anna said in terms of having the opportunity to collaborate and connect, because I think often we'll see our education system as education, but the reality is we could not do our work without our community and our providers in the community. And it's certainly a partnership and a collaborative effort to serve all of our kids, all of our families. And so this is just really echoed the importance of us staying connected and knowing that we are referring out to things that and services that are not in our wheelhouse in education. And we welcome partnerships to meet the needs of our families and get them access regardless of whatever barriers are being faced. We're open to using, we've got our own resources and we're partnering to just do what we can to raise our youth. So thank you for connecting, and thank you, Michael, for the opportunity, because this has just been wonderful. So thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Katie. Keep up the good work. You have a big job. All right, Dr. Hall, finish this. You're our wrap up. Bring us home.
No pressure, right? I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this discussion today. I've learned a lot from each of you, so thank you for that. At Ellie, I like to remind my team that we're in this to benefit our community. What are we doing in our sessions to make the life of that client a little bit better, and ultimately then to make the life of our community, that much better? And with technology, the future, AI, et cetera, in mind, how then are we going to use and continue to use these technologies to better our clients' lives, better our community, and I think it's fair to say, better our own experiences in providing mental health care services to individuals. So I'm self-admittedly an obnoxious optimist, and I think the future is bright. I think there's going to be a lot of benefit. It's going to be how we, as the humans, hopefully still in charge, choose to implement these technologies in the day-to-day lives of our clinics and our clients.
Right. Thank you all for carving out some time to share a little, even I know we're just scratching the surface, but we really appreciate your sharing your insights and perspectives from your jobs in multiple fields. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will leave you with a slide of resources. Feel free to use those and spread those around to anyone who can use them. And really, the invitation is open. If this discussion prompted questions, that's what journalists do. We are here to explore new questions and new conversations. We will keep this discussion going through our Lifting the Veil series on mental health care here in Iowa. So please keep in touch and take care and have a good afternoon.
I'll leave that. Oh, thanks, Mike.